I was working in the space industry in 1964 in San Diego, and I kept hearing about this band called the Beatles, and I was in my own band, and we were touring, working in the space industry during the weekdays and then on tour on the weekend. And I'm driving down the freeway and I hear this record, and it's "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and I'm going, that's all there is, this band I've been hearing about? And I met a guy from Capitol and we became friends, and he said, well, have you ever thought about going to work in the music business? So anyway, now I'm working at Capitol Records, and they say I have this band to work with, and it turns out to be the Beatles when they came on their '65 tour. So these guys come in the studio where we're doing the press conference, and they were like really everyday guys. They were joking and just natural to be with. They were kind of very common in a way. And it wasn't like, you know, you were with a superstar and you weren't a superstar. They just made you feel part of the gang. And well, it was like we were in this isolated area where everything on the outside was like madness, but when we were in a room or in a limo, everything was very, very normal. So they were just easy to be with, probably one of the easiest bands I ever worked with. The only people they knew in the industry was like a lord of EMI or the chairman of Capital Industries, or they were all like gray-haired suits, and here I was, this 20-some-year-old guy that was letting my hair grow and was really hip to the California scene. So when it came time to set up Apple Records, they sent for me.
I first met Ken Mansfield in 1968 when he first came to our office in London in Savile Row, and we thought he was a very smooth guy, very smooth, typical Californian, suntan, smooth, blue jeans all the time, and we didn't wear blue jeans in those days. We were sort of smart, snappy, sort of mods of London, but Ken was like really laid back and we were very edgy. So it was interesting. The difference between us was quite amazing.
I walk in the offices and you guys were so kind of odd in a way. Everybody was kind of real, you dressed really nice and you talked funny, you know? I always got the impression you were looking at me. I never knew what you guys thought about, you know, about
Mr. Laid-back California in his jeans and suntan.
Sometimes I thought you were making fun of me.
Well, we were, probably.
Oh, okay.
Because we're like that, you know.
Yeah.
It's an English thing.
Right.
We were one of the first companies around ever where people had fun working and no one could understand it. You know, you're not supposed to have fun when you work, but we really had fun. But we did get the job done.
I mean, think about it. One of the biggest record labels, really, of the time. There's like a handful of people. You know, 3 Savile Row, when I walked up in front, here's just a little bitty stairs, little railing. You walk in, there's no grand entrance. In fact, didn't you go into a hall to stairs and then off to the right?
It was an old house.
And you would go from this like madness outside into another form of madness. There would be the Hells Angels in there. There would be Hare Krishna people in there. There would be famous movie stars hanging out just to want to be with the Beatles. The recording studio was downstairs and the sessions might be going on. But you just never knew what was going to happen.
We would get in, and at 10 o'clock in the morning we'd have a bottle of champagne before we started work, just to get us rolling. and we had a really nice time there.
There was almost zero organization in that building. It was like all creative. Everything was just happening. People were coming up with ideas in and out, and you just never knew what was going to happen next.
And we could have phoned up the President of the United States if we wanted, and he'd have taken the call. But the interesting thing was we didn't realize that we had that much power, to be honest.
They would call me over to do one thing, and I would leave a week later and never even touch on what they asked me to do, because we'd get off onto some other thing. That's why I ended up there on the roof. I just happened to be in the building that day when we decided to do that. It was freezing cold up there. This is January 30. We're on top of a 5- or 6-story building. I'd flown in from California a few days before, and I didn't realize how cold it was going to be in London. I had to run down the street to find a top coat. But the neat thing about it was because it was white, and virtually everybody up there had black on. So in the pictures on the roof, it's real easy to spot me because I'm standing there in a white coat. And so there I am. The most famous time in the history of rock and roll just about is the last time the Beatles played together on the roof at Apple. And in that moment of time for me, I saw the Beatles as the rock and roll band that they were. And I think they sensed that. I think all their camaraderie came back together that day. And it was a magic moment. I think it's one of the most historical moments in rock and roll. The White Book's different because I'm not a reporter, and I actually started writing this as a journal, just about my time with them. And you know, most of the books are about people who research these kind of things, and not very many people who are actually there have written books. The pictures that are in the book are pictures that were taken not because they were posed. Everything is just kind of how it happened. It's not only about the Beatles, it's really about an era. And because the Beatles were the Beatles, they seemed to define the era for us. But in that time period, there were the Byrds and the Eagles and the various California bands, the Iron Butterflies and the Doors and all that. And everything kind of started mixing together to where we started coming back and forth across the ocean. So the book is about everybody from Andy Williams to David Cassidy, the Roy Orbison, to the Beach Boys, Waylon Jennings and the Outlaws. And then we had the Merle Haggards and the Buck Owens and the Glen Campbells. It was an era to where we were all getting to know each other and to know each other's music and become friends with each other. For me, when I look back to see where I've been, to have come off of Indian reservation lands in northern Idaho and end up working with the greatest stars of all time, it just kind of boggles my mind. And just the people that I ended up working with and being friends with, it's just bizarre to me to have been thrown into these things.
40 years, goodness me.
Yeah, we met in 60...
I suppose it is 40 years, isn't it?
67.
Yeah, it is 40 years ago. It was 40 years ago today.